Teacher, leave them kids alone. Financial education has had disappointing results in the past. This is in the finance and economics section of The Economist. So let's take a look at this. It says, here's a test. Suppose you had $100 in a savings account that paid an interest rate of 2% a year. If you leave the money in the account, how much would you have accumulated after 5 years? More than $102? Exactly $102? Or less than $102? And would an investor who received 1% interest when inflation was 2% see his spending power rise, fall, or stay the same? These are pretty simple tests, right? But this test, as simple as it may seem for readers of maybe The Economist, a survey found that only half of Americans over the age of 50 gave the correct answers. If so many people are mathematically challenged, it's hardly surprising that they struggle to deal with the small print of a mortgage and insurance contract. So the solution might seem obvious according to The Economist. They say, provide more financial education. The British government just added financial literacy to the national school curriculum to general acclaim. But is it possible to teach people to be more financially savvy? A survey by the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland reported that unfortunately we do not find conclusive evidence that in general, financial education programs do lead to greater financial knowledge and ultimately to better financial behavior. So I think this is interesting because it's going to talk about kids in school. And I think about it like, I can't really teach my sons math because it's different than the math that I grew up with, and I'm in the world of finance. Like a lot of their homework, I'm really glad that their teachers understand it and it's kind of their expertise. But I don't necessarily want a teacher that's paid a W-2 by the government to give my kids financial education, especially not personal finance. I don't know that that could be added to their slate of things that they have to know. And I don't think that with the charge with money and how people view it and a lot of the emotions that come with it, that they would actually be qualified to do so. So the article says, this is especially the case with financial behavior when children are taught the subject at school, often well before they have to deal with the issues personally. Surveys by the Jumpstart Coalition for Personal Financial Literacy, a campaign group, found that American students who had taken courses in personal finance or money management were no more financially literate than those who had not. No more finance. That's crazy, right? Maybe even worse because of the misinformation out there. Maybe it's because the institutions that are giving the information don't have the best interest of the students at heart, or the teachers don't know how to properly articulate this in a way that kids can understand. Look, I wanted to create this program called Schooled that I was going to release on YouTube. And I took my nephews, I took my niece, I took my kids, and we put them in the classroom at our house and put a camera on me. And I found it was difficult at times to convey the concepts. I wrote this children's book called I Am Money, but only wrote it because of the brilliant Julia Cook coming in and making sure it was interesting and intriguing and would reach kids. It is a bit of an art that goes along with this. So in this, it says a detailed survey of students from a Midwestern state found that those who had not taken a financial course were more likely to pay their credit card in full every month. They found out that people who hadn't taken it were more likely to do that, avoiding fees and charges than those who had actually studied the subject. Seems kind of insane. Perhaps the answer is to teach people when the issues are more relevant. I don't know. That's what this article is saying. That was the conclusion of the Cleveland Fed researchers who recommended the programs be taught at specific to individuals, such as those making house purchase or struggling with credit card debts. I don't know. This is why I'm really, passionate about coming out with a book called Life and Debt and really using humor to educate on this, because it's just something that often the terminology can be confusing. And, but I think once people get into debt, they kind of feel like they're enslaved to paying that off. And there's these student loans that are this massive baggage that people have to carry around for so long in their life, or getting in a mortgage that they can't afford. And when it's adjustable and the interest rates go up, it starts to become crippling. I think it's important that we educate people earlier. That's why I partner with Julia Cook and Source Books for I Am Money. That's why I'm writing this. I get that this is a problem, because when I was left to my own devices trying to teach, kids ranging from age 10 to 17, it was a bit complicated. And, but this is the thing. It's worth solving. It says, even the approach of waiting until they've got the situations has its problems. Consumer enthusiasm for learning about finance is limited. When a free online financial literacy course is offered to struggling credit card borrowers, only 0.4% logged into the website and just 0.03% complete the course. Those who chose to be educated about finance may be those who are already interested and relatively well-informed about it. Making such education mandatory for consumers would be expensive. I don't love mandatory either, right? Mandatory, like nobody's motivated by that. It says who would pay for it. Governments have many claims on their cash. We know that. They just borrow. Financial firms might sponsor such courses, but would the resulting advice be entirely objective? Of course not. It wouldn't be objective. It's going to be very much for them. Another problem highlighted by critics such as Lauren Willis of Loyola Law School, Los Angeles, is that many financial issues are much more complex than deciding whether to pay off credit card debts. How much money should be set aside for retirement, for example? Well, maybe I would even question about retirement in the first place. And often they're getting you to think about setting aside rather than creating cash flow. They're not talking about investor DNA and that each individual would invest differently based upon their skill sets and their values and what drives them. They would start to talk about immediately thinking, and this is saying, oh, mix between equities, bonds, and other assets. They're thinking of investing as something outside of ourselves. And they're thinking about it accumulating over a long period of time rather than cash flowing. They're not thinking about it of understanding what your cost of money is. Your cost of money is either the highest rate that you borrow money at, right, or the best rate you could sustainably earn on your cash. See, we always finance whether we pay cash and forfeit the right to earn interest or whether we borrow and pay the interest. Either way, there's an expense. But when we understand our own cost of money, we can understand what makes sense when it comes to how we finance a home or don't finance a home, or whether we rent. Like, we have to look at the individual and make personal finance personal again. They're looking at it transactional and as products, but it begins with who is the person, right? And coming from the perspective that person has, what are their objectives and what really matters to them, right? And then it's about what's the purpose that they have in life and making sure they invest in themselves, then building out a financial plan based upon their investor DNA, understanding their cost of money, understanding their objectives, and not just diversified portfolio. Oh, you're young, you can take risk, and all that kind of garbage that's kind of out there. So this article says 15 years ago, the conventional wisdom was that equity-heavy pension portfolios would earn high returns and that individuals need only make modest contributions. That turned out to be wrong. That's like in the 90s. They thought, oh yeah, it's just double-digit interest rates. It's because they're looking at stuff instead of looking at like what the risk management would need to be and what the possible sustainability would be. They extrapolate a really unique good time and act like that's always going to happen. And it gets us to take risk, and that risk ends up decimating our wealth over time. And the riskiest thing is when we don't have financial education, when we don't understand what our plan is, when other people are selling us their products based upon what they get paid. This article says, furthermore, many consumers do not want to make their own financial decisions, either because they find the issues too complex, which is, I think, by the way, my commentary, part of the design. Hey, it's too complicated. Just trust us, this financial expert. If there's so many financial experts, why are we in so much financial crisis? If there are so many gurus and they were right, then why aren't people further ahead? I'm one of these people that's trying to help. I'm trying to discern this, but it's often because there's so much confusing information and people don't know where to start, and people want to skip over the basics to something more seductive and sexy that sounds like it's going to get a huge return. It's kind of that lottery syndrome. So if you don't have financial empowerment and financial literacy, then you're going to be at the hands of other people that may not actually have your best interest at heart. It says when firms offer a range of pension funds to choose from, the default option is by far the most popular. Government should focus on making that option as safe and inexpensive as possible. Like, if we're going to ask the government to do that, we're in trouble. The government should focus on that. Are the governments good with money? No. Are the governments good with, a lot of stuff? They're overburdened as it is, and now we're going to ask them to do this? So, should we give up on financial education altogether? Not necessarily, right? This is why children's, I want to be part of the solution, not just pointing out the problem. The purpose of education is to prepare children for the challenges they face in life. We're all born and have to deal with money unless you're living in the woods. That money doesn't really come with an instruction manual. And because there's so much interest out there to separate you from your money and get you to hand it over to other people, where they tell you high risk equals high return, but you take the risk while they get the return. Or they tell you it's the long haul while they're making money all through that long haul and you're not benefiting from it. It's because of faulty information. And the main premise of that is that wealth is a function of three things. It takes money to make money. That's what they tell you. But it doesn't take their money. High risk equals high return, but they're not taking the risk. Long haul, neglecting cash flow and stewardship. So ultimately, this is about understanding some of the basics. This is the most basic piece of it. Pay yourself first. automatically take some and put it away. Automatically save, deliberately invest. Don't just automatically put money and lock it up. Pay off higher interest rates if it's costing you more than what you're earning on your money. That's that cost of money situation, and if you can pay yourself first, understand your cost of money, and then learn to focus on just a few investments over your lifetime rather than diversifying into things you know nothing about or trusting people that aren't helping you build cash flow, and then have your financial house in order where you're plugging leaks. The main ways to plug leaks is see if you're overpaying tax and get a good strategist. Don't overpay that. Number 2, don't overpay interest. So if you have underperforming assets, higher interest rates, like I said, pay those off. If you can out-earn that safely, then maybe you're the type of person that can have some loans. Then the third thing is don't invest in things that have a myriad of fees, retirement plans, mutual funds that are loaded. Like, look and understand those costs and see if they're actually worth it. And then finally, with insurance, make sure you're transferring risk without transferring more money than you need by looking at, is there duplicate coverages or there improper structure? Some basics. This is why I am having this channel and giving you resources. One of the great resources is the Freedom Course. So you can go to garrettgunderson.com/freedom. It's a complimentary course. I get this as saying not everybody goes through courses, but here you are watching the videos. You can even put in the comments your questions and I'll answer those on video and tell you what would I do, what are the considerations, and help to simplify this. So look, as this article says, coping with finance is one of those challenges. It may be that better designed courses could be more successful. Replacing yakking lectures with financially themed video games is one way that people are trying to make education more appealing. That's great. I mean, I did a comedy tour and did comedy around the topic of money. This is a challenge I'm looking to solve. Do you have ideas? I would love to hear from you. It says, none of this, alas, will help if students cannot understand basic maths. Look, here's the thing. Math and money are not the same thing. That's the thing we have to understand. I wrote about it in Killing Sacred Cows. You can grab a copy at garrettgunderson.com/KSC and go right to that chapter. That's the philosophical construct. That book isn't complicated. And people that read it will understand because it helps you get the ideas, and then you have a better information around the philosophy of what to do with your money. So as the saying goes, there are 10 types of people, those who understand buying numbers and those who don't. So try to be a little bit funny. So anyway, there's a correction here at the end. It says the original version of this article stated that only half of Americans answered a question about compound interest correctly. We should have said that over half correctly answered 2 questions, the second of which was how an investor's savings would be affected by a 1% interest rate when inflation was 2%. This was corrected later on. So anyway, this is why using entertainment to educate is the key, so that people feel engaged and they don't feel like they're just, told, oh, save more money, budget, throw your money into mutual funds and hope for the best. That kind of tired advice is why we have this problem. And because when people aren't educated on paying themselves first, investing in themselves, plugging their financial leaks, having basic wealth frameworks that will help them to discern truth from falsehood, that's why I have a passion for this. And I'm going through article to article on my channel to support you. So check out the other videos that are similar to this and learn about different financial topics so that you can make better choices. Hey, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And if you're enjoying these videos, well, there's good news. More where that came from. So go ahead and click through and watch the next video now.